All right. What's up, everybody? How you doing out there? Welcome back to the show. This is last week's fights. There were no fights last week, so this is actually a next week's fights. We're going to be going over UFC 310 and a little bit of this PFL World Championship event that did take place last Friday. To do all of that with me, my name is Thinker St. James, of course, and with me, as always, my good friend, the Ohio player, and the man who is the number one Josh Van fan on the planet, Mr. Chase Parton. How you doing, brother?
I'm here. No fights, kind of lax, so ready to get into whatever we got going.
Yeah, well, we did have some fights. We had this massive in certain ways, this PFL World Championship event that was paired with the PFL MENA Championship event. So what that means is that the PFL operates regional circuits as well as their main tournament, I guess. And so MENA is the Middle East and North Africa. So that those fighters were having their tournament. And then on top of that, on the same basic card, essentially, it's one event, they had the World Championship in addition. So this was a 9-hour super event, essentially, starting at 7:15 in the morning on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. So I don't know how many people actually were up and watching this event live. It was taking place in Saudi Arabia. I know that there weren't that many people watching it live because the crowd did not start filling out until the very end as usual. However, even when it did fill out, it was not super packed. How much of this did you end up seeing, Chase? What was the total, you think?
Of MENA? Approximately. No, I think I actually got right at the end of MENA, right when they were trying to start, the PFL championships, and it was taking forever. Maybe that's why there was such a long gap between there, is because a show was ending and then they were waiting for, the next, essentially the next show to start. So none of MENA, unfortunately. And then it was, I think, about 10:30. I had been waiting for about 45 minutes, and then they started the first fight of the PFL, which was, or I'm trying to think. Hold on, maybe this was the last fight of the MENA, because when I went back and rewatched it, sorry, I'm all over the place.
No,
I went back and rewatched it, and the first fight that I watched was definitely not the first fight that I watched in the morning. So maybe it was the last fight of the MENA that I caught. But I can tell you it was a 5-rounder, and it was a snooze fest. It was so snoozy.
Really? Because there really weren't. Actually, you probably might have seen the very, very last fight of the event, because it could have been. I'm all over the place too. It was hard. It's hard to keep track of. This was a 16 fight ordeal. Is, I think, the biggest point that I really wanted to make about all of this. So it's like there should not be 9-hour events, period. There shouldn't be 9 hour anything as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is like a full work shift with a lunch break type of thing. It started at 7:15 in the morning. If you watched all of it in real time with the pacing issues that Chase is talking about, it ended around 4 o'clock p.m. This is absurd.
Yeah, it was so weird. I'm not gonna lie. So whatever fight I caught took me out the event. Like I was trying to get my dad to watch. I was like, "Yo, this is like, this is part of my job at this point. We got to
Sure.
like keep up with the news." And I'm watching it and he's like, "We're not going to watch another one of these, right?" And I'm like, Dude, I don't think we can, man. Like it was bad."
Well, okay. So, I mean, I think that you might have caught one of the weaker fights that might have
Yeah.
happened on here because I do have to say that the quality level of the majority of the fights throughout this 16 fight ordeal was were actually pretty good. There were a lot of knockouts on a lot of finishes in general on this two card thing. I want to call it a card, but it's really two cards in one. But there were a lot of stoppages. In fact, the World Championship, only one fight went to decision, and it was really kind of a banger in the sense that it was Brendan Loughnane in the main event here against Timur Khizriev, and Khizriev was just annihilating him, and the ability for Brendan Loughnane to stay in the fight was pretty impressive. But so that's the quality of the fights themselves. Uh, I mean, dealing with the length and the pacing, Chase, I got to give you some credit here because I think I even mentioned this on the stream before. Like I hadn't been very like conscious of the pacing of these events like in the past. It just sort of was like fights on. If it's not on, I'm doing something else, whatever. I know that I have an allotted amount of time that I'm going to be hanging out with these fights. So whether I'm actually actively watching one or something else is happening, I just sort of roll it all into one. But now that you've kind of put this bug in my ear, you made it apparent that this is something to look out for. I have been more conscious of it lately, and this is a great example of exactly what we've already said, that there should never be 9 hour events to begin with. And then also that when there are finishes and stoppages, like it really does take you out of it in
Yeah.
the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think it's really because that's actually something I was gonna note right off the bat when you first started, is that there was a lot of quick fights on this. Like I was trying to, keep them on and do something else, and then I'm like looking over, I'm like, holy shit, like it's done. Like, wow. So that was good. But yeah, then you get to the pacing issue. Thankfully, when I rewatched these, I flipped through them because I
Sure.
had I had known what I was watching and that morning it was not going to get me through what I needed to do on Sunday yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, and
So
that is certainly the right way to do this. Like, so the Mina card, I did that with pretty much. I had it on while I was doing some other stuff, caught a good amount of it, but I was in and out a little bit on it. But the World Championship portion, I actually did a rewatch stream here on the channel on Sunday, a couple days after it took place, and even during that, there were times of inactivity where I'm on my phone, I'm just chilling. There wasn't that many people in the chat because it's PFL, so it was just, the pacing was certainly noticeable. To put it into context here, when I say that there were long periods of talking and promo packages, there were sometimes as long as 7 minutes of what I just mentioned there. Between the Mina and the World Championship transition, they replayed huge chunks of fights that we literally just watched. So I mean, like the pacing like became very glaring towards that transition period where it's like, look, obviously you have not timed this out well enough or anticipated that these fights would go to stoppage, to finishing before going the distance. And now I'm like rewatching portions where the referee is blatantly fucking up, which was kind of funny that that's the fight that they chose to do the replay of there. That was just a funny thing in general. You had a referee that was there was a cup check stoppage mid fight, and instead of taking the fighters to their neutral corners, he put them into their actual corners and then just went over to each of them and told the coaches to not coach, which is like all you had to do is kind of shift them to neutral corners, but just strange. Also, replaying promo packages that we had already seen. That was another thing. I'm like, I've already seen this Dakota Ditcheva hype package. I mean, again, this is all really just going back to the same point. 9 hours is unacceptable for. I mean, dude, if this was every legend that you can think of, if this was fucking Fedor and Ronda Rousey and Brock Lesnar and fucking Connor and all these, it should still not be 9 hours long. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think another thing to note, and I don't know who to put the blame on at ESPN. When you go to UFC and you go to like the full cards, they will have the breakdowns on the replay of each individual fights. So when I don't have time to sit here and flip through the commercials and see when the next fight is, or go and click and I see the same promo video, yeah, that is an issue. Especially when I go and flip another and I see it again, I'm like, did I go back or did it not load? So I don't know who didn't do that for the PFL and the Mina. You can only just have like the full card, like VOD, and it's kind of crazy. So that was one annoying thing. Another thing that is crucial to note is that Greg Hardy, that was his name, right?
Dan Hardy.
Dan Hardy. Oh my gosh, goodness
Greg Hardy's
gracious.
the other guy, but yes, yeah, Dan on the commentary you're talking about.
Yeah, dude, he's bad. He's horrible. Oh my goodness. When I was in the replay, even in the morning, I think I had to listen to him for so long. That's probably why I don't like it, because nothing was happening and I was just listening to him. And I just don't like him. I don't know. Maybe because, he's got, the misses, but I don't know. I just didn't enjoy him.
All right, fair enough, fair enough. Going back to your point about ESPN, who is the official broadcast partner of the PFL, this all kind of ties into what we've been doing a little bit of ongoing coverage of the PFL in certain ways here on the podcast here, and one thing that kind of piggybacks off of what you were saying, yes, they don't break down the fights by individual fights on the replay on ESPN Plus. Also, here on ESPN proper on the Fight Center, you can't go into any of these fights to look at stats and stuff. I can switch
Oh, are you
over here.
serious?
Yeah, no, yeah. Like, I mean, like I was going to be like, oh, well, I can at least go through and like, because here for context, we'll be bringing this up here in a minute with, the Pantoja versus Asakura 310 card. You got all of this information, all of these, the profiles and everything. You go back to PFL, it's I can't click anywhere. It's just it just shows the level of commitment that they have to their product here. Which I was like, these fights are not that bad. So I like I'm just thinking it's strange that PFL has done like they PFL is doing a lot of like the right things, and then there's a lot of things that are not caught up yet in other weird ways. And I'd say that that's an interesting element of it to note that this is your official broadcast partner. Perhaps you should have them accommodating you at the same level that they're doing for other people in your space, other organizations in your space.
I think there's three things I want to know. One last thing about the broadcast itself that I was watching is the dude. So the dude behind the camera that goes, all right, three, two, and like just that dude sucked, because they were just like, there was multiple times where they're just like, and then they start talking like that. He was way off. So that was that. Go ahead. I'll let you.
Well, I was just going to say there's often been notes of broadcast issues with PFL. That's like a known thing that they've been kind of dealing with for a while. In fact, going all the way back, I think it's probably almost a year old at this point now. On the Yama in Yama, the show that I do on the channel, I did a breakdown of PFL events and broke down a lot of those same issues back then a year ago that I'm still seeing now. So it's like, yeah, that note is absolutely still a problem. And the other, like, I mean, that's all you have to say about the broadcast. There's still other things that I got to go through on this thing, because one thing that wanted to add to this with all of this time frame stuff and the pacing that we were talking about, no musical acts in MMA broadcasts. Please do not turn this into the bullshit we are seeing in boxing. I have tried to watch these boxing events, and it's like, if I want to watch a concert, I will watch a concert. If I want to watch fights, that's what I want to see. Now, I mean, this guy Nav, who was the musical act in this PFL event, was not bad. I mean, as a dude who, is very well versed in the hip hop space and, the art form, I thought he was pretty okay, but it just was so out of place. And I felt terrible for this guy in the sense that at one point they did like the camera sweep like away from him and kind of did like a crowd shot. This dude was playing to a fucking empty arena, my guy. There was no one in this place by the time when he finished
Everybody
his
getting hot dogs, man.
bro. I mean, it
Oh
might
well,
have been,
sorry, they don't eat pork. My bad.
well, yeah, the kebab, whatever the equivalent over there in Saudi Arabia. But I mean, when he finished his performance, you could hear a fucking pin drop, dude. I felt terrible for his DJ who was trying to hype this crowd up, like this lack of crowd up. It was ridiculous. So like that's in the smack dab in the middle of this affair, this day long affair that they had going on. Another thing that was in the middle of this day long affair, which I thought was interesting, this is actually a positive note, but still, again, in the grand scheme of things, kind of gets a little bit washed out, is that did you see that there was a female fight on the Mina card?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so on the Mina portion of the two cards, this dual event here, they had a female fight, which was essentially a showcase fight for a Saudi Arabian female fighter. I forget what country her opponent was fighting out of, but it was another Middle Eastern country, which I was like, that's kind of cool because these this region of the world, women are a little bit kind of behind in the representation. So I thought that was nice that they had that. However, it was just a little bit funny to me that this is a championship event for this Middle East and North Africa region that they're promoting. And this was an amateur fight where one of the fighters missed weight, making it a catch weight. So, I mean, I don't know. I just thought that was a little bit funny to have that slotted in an amateur fight amongst their championship fighters. Anyway.
I actually want to question, your mindset on this because you're mad about the 9-hour event, and I rightfully so. That is way too long. But think of it like maybe they're thinking of it more like a fair or a festival. It's like, it's an all day thing. You're like, we're just hanging out with the homies and then there's fights going on. Not we're watching fights like all fucking day. Like I don't know. Maybe there's a different culture element to it that I'm like,
Yeah, that is actually a point that my own dad brought up when I was talking to him about this. He was like, it's one of those things. You take the entire family out, it turns into a carnival. I was like, well, cool. Then you put Randy Couture in the dunk tank, and then there. I guess it all makes sense. However, if I'm tuning in, like thinking of it as an actual MMA event, like what we're used to, then a little bit strange. So perhaps that is the case, but. That element of it with the women, adding a little bit of variety, I thought was a good thing.
yeah, that's the real carnival. That's the real carnival trick right there. It's like, oh my god, they got women there.
Without any kind of head coverings as well, which I in these countries that are a little bit more strict to their cultural laws and all that kind of stuff, I was like, okay, Saudi Arabia is actually trying to show a little bit of a progressivism there, which I thought was pretty good. However, all of this was Saudi Arabia's work. I mean, this is we talk about where this money for PFL is coming from. Saudi Arabia is a big portion of that. And this was, just stamped Riyadh everywhere that you looked. So, to that point, a good amount of the ring announcing and interviews were only in Arabic, occasionally translated. That sort of added another kind of kink in the, in the flow of things to an extent. I mean, it was just odd is all I guess I'm trying to get at here. And really, the bigger point of all of this is that why I wanted to talk about this on here specifically is because we just covered PFL/Bellator having these issues with their star fighters, and Bellator coming out and talking about not being able to get booked for fights. PFL already has a very, to some, confusing system with the tournament and the points and all this kind of stuff. My overarching point with all of this is that you are doing yourself no favors by presenting the product in this way, because these fights were not bad. If you had stripped this down and made this a 12 fight or a 10 fight card with the quality level that you have, I understand that you have this tournament system, so it's bracketed and you have to get these fights to their logical conclusion, but break them up and put them on different days then, or there's a better way to do this. Put on some fights that are outside of the tournament system, just as showcase fights, featured fights. There's a lot of different ways to break this down to make it more palatable. You're doing yourself no favors to winning new fans by doing this.
So there's another thing that I want to talk about specifically with the belts. But first I will go on the financial situation, because I think is a very good point to make, that in the morning I heard this and I just want to make sure that this is exactly what it is. These are $1 million fights here. I'm
Yes.
thinking, who the fuck's who are they paying this money to? Like I'm like, when I heard that, I'm like, yo, these better be the best motherfuckers out here. Like, well, they're just getting $1 million for winning. Like, that's crazy. Like, who, I know where the money's coming from, but it's like, yo, that's a lot of chunk to just throw at 5, 6 people right now.
Yeah, well, and that's, I mean, again, it's
As
just
a
another
losing market specifically. Like,
that right. That's the whole thing. It's like there are elements of it that make a lot. What I was saying on the watch along that I think really uh, presents itself in a very logical way at this point is that the pipeline, the Kayla Harrison pipeline, is the way to fucking go if you are an up and coming mixed martial artist. You start out in PFL, you win, I think, 3 fights basically. It's like, you know, one in the regular season, one in the playoffs, quote unquote, and then your championship fight. You end up with $1 million. You do that twice. Now you have $2 million in the bank. And then if you're early enough in your career and doing it dominantly enough, because a lot of these fighters, that's another big note, is that a lot of these fighters that ended up winning these $1 million checks all have undefeated records. They're, the cream rises to the top extremely fast in this environment. Then you have the opportunity, if you so choose, to say, okay, now I'm going to go over to the UFC.
yeah, it's really crazy to me that a market that is financially shit right now. I mean, it would be different if they actually were coming up with the 5 million, but like, this, or what is it, 6 fights,
Six,
seven
yeah.
fights, yeah. But we know it's just like they get $6 million from the Saudis. Hey, you're throwing an event in here. Here's your money to give to the winners, whatever kind of deal. It's not really the PFL necessarily.
Well, I mean,
Um,
that's been their model since they started before the Saudi Arabian infusion of money, though. So I mean, they must have had it from somewhere at first, or maybe, you know, this certainly helps that. But either way, it's just that like these there's a couple of fighters on here, like Dakota Ditcheva comes to mind. I mean, she's this really sharp fighter out of England that won the tournament here. She just beat Tyler Santos, who's a former UFC fighter, of course, former title challenger in the UFC. I mean, this is a fighter who is probably on the come up. I would suspect that she's going to be making the same basic journey that Kayla Harrison did. So it's not like these fighters are like necessarily that they need to just be no names. However, you end up with Tamir Kizriev. You end up with Dovlet Yagshi Muradov. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of these guys that are going to end up sort of just washed into the mix because they're not like big self promoters. So you're not really gaining like the whole atmosphere does not lend itself to attracting new fans.
Yeah, it is. It's a crazy one. I'm not gonna lie. Just everything going on, the money, the talent that they have. Like, me knowing at least Dakota, I'm very blessed, because if she does come over to the UFC eventually, which is almost a given at this point, I get to see the beginning of, that journey. That then I get to see her rise again. That would be really great. But before talking about that, I also want to note, I don't know how many belts this place has, but these are now world championship belts that they fought for. Dakota was the European champion as well. So I don't what's going on here? Is this WWE shit? How many belts we got going here? Like,
Well,
this is
that goes back to that Mina versus World thing. So like they have, I believe, 3 currently like regional operations that run. They have North America, Europe, and this Middle East, or yeah, Middle East, North Africa. So those are tournaments, and then the World is a tournament. Uh, yeah,
they're getting a little too pretentious. I think that's what it is.
I mean, they're trying to say that it's more like other major sports that way, where it's like, oh, you have the minors and then you have the main show, and the UFC has Road to UFC now, so it's like, yeah, that's at least what I've heard a little bit of from them. It's just, guys, like, no one cares. I really
Yeah.
hate I hate to
Make
say
it
it as bluntly as that.
Make it simple. Make the product simple and profitable before you start trying to get elaborate with your ideas. Like, make the one really, really crisp idea work, get some, net positive, get out the debt pool, and then go from there. It's like, you don't need tough. You don't need road to the UFC stuff. Those, like, tough specifically. I'm glad they don't do something. That would be really funny if PFL was like, all right, guys, we got this idea, new show. It's just like Tough. It's going to capitalize the market. And it's like, Jesus. I mean, it's a joke because thankfully they're not that dumb right now. So it's, I don't know. It's just a weird, weird company right now.
Yeah, and I think that that's really
Who runs it? Like, what's the dude's name? I'm sorry.
Don Davis is like the big guy behind the scenes, and then there's Peter Murray is the president. That's the guy that was giving out the big novelty checks.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I know, that's
Yeah.
another element of this. Like we're doing the like a telethon or some shit, you know?
The lottery check, like the
Right.
when you're on the news. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like I said at the start, we don't necessarily need to break down these individual fights. The only one I did want to at least mention was that I was very sad that Impa Kasanganay did not win his fight. He is a former UFC fighter who I would say is pretty well the American dream in the sense that he was, I believe, the guy that got he got knocked out. I forget who there was it. Did he end up getting knocked out by Oxfighter? That might have been the deal. Either way, Impa Kasanganay was a dude who did not have great success in the UFC. Went over to the PFL, won their tournament. So you can say that there is merit there. I mean, this is a guy who started off in one organization, didn't find success, went over, and now he's a millionaire. So I mean, it's theoretically at least,
I think another thing that I can note, just because it's actually frustrating to see. So you made the note that you can't see the individual stats, right? You can also not see the weights. That's
Yeah.
fucking annoying. The only way that I knew, like, so the first fight of the night, or whatever first fight of the PFL card, I didn't know these were heavyweights until, like, if you look up on the right side where it says claims PFL heavyweight world title with submission, um, that's a weird way for me to find out the way, like, that those were heavyweights, because
Oh yeah.
I really wasn't in the mix of it. But the fact that he got a triangle as a heavyweight is pretty impressive. I just think that this website is really stupid for how they will not let me find that information
Yeah,
easily.
as their official broadcast partner and the outlet of note, ESPN, one of the
Yeah.
biggest sports monitoring outlets in the world. Let me bring this version of it up real quick. This is the
Oh, okay.
PFL's actual website, and the only reason I didn't start with this is that it's broken down by the brackets. So it's like I have to scroll through all of these to
Oh my fucking god.
but yeah, but B, the other more to me bigger issue here. This they haven't updated it. This should already be who won. We know
Not
that
season. Hey, season's over, brother. I mean, we're on
exactly.
vacation. Like, fuck
Yeah, right.
updating.
Yeah, exactly. Now there needs to be at least one guy back there, doing the coding real quick
Yeah.
to actually put the winners in here. But um, so yeah, I mean, you have the it because it goes by weights. It's a good point that you make about the way that it's laid out on ESPN on the ESPN website because the weights do matter a lot when it comes to this. These are winners of their weight class.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you have
Specifically of the weight class. Yeah. So that's funny.
yeah. So anyway, I mean, we don't have to dwell too much more on it. I just I did want to at least touch on it a little bit because it did happen while we did not have UFC fights, and that element of it right there would have been one where it's like, look, this is your time to fucking shine, dude. Like this is your big world championship event. This is the one
Yeah.
that you need to you have no UFC competition for the weekend. Everybody is off. It's a holiday weekend here. Happy Thanksgiving to all of my American friends. You have a lot of opportunity to make a big splash with an event like this. Also promote it correctly, all that element of it. Like this could have been your time to shine, and then we end up with a 9-hour slog with all of the stuff that we just talked about. PFL, you got to tighten up.
I think a couple other things I want to note is that when it comes to PFL, I don't know. With the UFC, I'm kind of like, you can make assumptions on like which regions are kind of like the powerhouse at the time. With PFL, since it's all region based kind of deal, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, but I do see Turkmenistan. I've seen a couple of those guys around here on PFL. The last card that I watched, I think there was maybe it was even this fucking guy. But for some reason, I don't know. I just think that's interesting. That guy
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah. I had made that point on the watch along that it was cool to see Turkmenistan being represented there. A lot of Dagestan representation, of course. And that's another element of why, like, you're not going to be getting your big stars off of the fighters themselves necessarily. I mean, like, some rare exceptions perhaps, like I think Dakota Ditcheva is probably going to be one of those. Brendan Loughnane to an extent in England, I guess, is pretty well known at this point, but it's still second level. um you have the promotion has to be picking up the slack for that, because every time it's a very telling thing that during the post-fight interviews, every one of these guys from, Russia, like the Middle East region, like a lot of these guys all had basically the same thing to say. I train
Yeah,
very hard. And
alhamdulillah.
exactly. I mean, definitely that. It's thank you, God. I train really hard. It's not about the money. It's about the belt. It's about my accomplishments. This is for my family. Peace. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so, there's just elements of slack that needs to be picked up by the PFL that they're just not doing yet.
Yeah. I think another thing to know, if we can go back to Dakota, I think, because
Sure.
she's really the star. I mean, nobody came to this PFL World Championship without coming to see her. Like, she really is, at least in my opinion, because I'm somebody who doesn't watch the PFL, but I know, like, she's a highlight, and she's got like charisma. She's got a little spunk. Like, she comes out dancing. Like, she's got her own thing, and I kind of dig it, dude. And she's, not only is she just like pretty and funny and stuff like that, but she's kind of a killer. Like, she really can finish women. So shout out her. She's really like, this is, I don't, it's I think this is normally used in a bad way, but like low hanging fruit, like this is the UFC. Like, they're gonna just grab her up like so quick. Like,
Yeah, I would think that the PFL needs to throw a lot of money at her, going forward, to make sure that they keep her, if that's what they want to do, because she is. I mean, she's the real deal. That's what I was saying during her fight. Her fight was fantastic. She looked amazing in her fight against Tyler Santos. Again, this is a former title challenger in the UFC, so I mean, this is not slouch competition necessarily. She came up short in her shot, but Tyler Santos I'm talking about, of course. But yeah, Dakota Ditcheva is all of those things you mentioned, and real deal in her fights. So, and undefeated as well. England, the England component of it. We were just talking on this show not too long ago about how England is underrepresented when it comes to women fighters. Uh, I mean, there's a lot of things going for Dakota Ditcheva right now, and I would think that PFL should be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that she does not leave the organization. But who knows?
yeah, 100%. I didn't really catch too much of what she was doing in the actual fight, like in the individual sequences themselves. But I mean, listen, if you're able to get a body TKO kind of deal, you're setting it up throughout the fight. It's not just something that just, I mean, sometimes you do get that one lucky liver shot, whatever, but this didn't look like that. She was beating her down. She really
Oh
wore
yeah,
down. It was a grind, and it was a quick
absolutely.
one, really.
Yeah, no, she was picking Tyler apart throughout most of the fight, which was, I mean, actually, pretty much all of the fight. Tyler Santos really did not have an answer for a lot of what she was doing. She mixes up her striking really nicely. She's just really well rounded. I mean, she's a hot prospect in a lot of ways. So,
You know what's another thing that I want to know is, so normally when you get the young phenom versus like the old vet on the way out kind of deal. That's what this matchup was. That's normally earlier in the UFC, or like midway through like their UFC career, in the UFC, that is. So like, this being like the highest level of competition, it is kind of telling, like, there is going to be levels to it. Like, the highest level that you faced is somebody who's old and past their time and was a once, a has been kind of deal. So Dakota, listen, she's proven a lot, but I hope she knows that she still has more to prove. I hope she carries a chip. Like, I mean, she does. She seems confident. She seems like she has a lot to prove. But I hope that just doesn't come with, whatever person makes fun of her. Like, she just needs to bring it. Like, I'm
oh
really
yeah,
excited.
I think that she does. I think that I think that's something that she's pretty well aware of. It seems like she's got a good team around her and all that kind of stuff. Her mother was a kickboxing champion as well, so she
True,
comes
I did
from
see that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
she comes from good stock in that regard. But yeah, I mean, going back just briefly to that point of like the cream rising to the top in the PFL. I mean, look at this: Kizriev 18-0, Ditcheva 14-0, uh, Musayev, who won his fight 20-0 with one no contest or whatever. I mean, like these guys that I mean, even Oleg Popov, who did not win his fight, was coming in only with one loss there. So I mean, like like this is one of those deals here where like the level. You can separate yourself very quickly from the lesser competition in a organization like this. So utilize it to your advantage and take it to as far as you can in there, or as far as you want to, and then just know that, like you're saying, to your point, that if you are going to continue on and want to go up against the major players outside of the PFL, that you have a whole new set of challenges in front of you.
Yeah. Also, another thing to note is Habib has coached all three of the major promotions lightweight champs.
That is true. I did see that. Yeah. Yeah. Habib. I mean, again, a lot of Dagestan representation on this to begin with. So it does not surprise me in the slightest. But yeah, I mean, Habib is continuing on to be one of the more formidable coaches and by extension gyms in the game,
Yeah. Yeah,
taking on the role of his father.
it's funny, speaking of the gym, whatever happened, whatever came about that whole incident that was,
Aha. Well, I have not heard any updates on that, but trust that I am keeping my ears open.
gotcha, gotcha. Okay, good deal.
Yeah.
Making
Yeah.
sure nobody forgets.
Oh yeah, no, this elephant never forgets any of that kind of stuff. That's why when I had heard about the Connor situation with the civil case, I was like, aha, that's the logical conclusion of that finally after all this time.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, I mean, I guess that's about all we have to talk about with PFL. It's really just more of a mention of that it was decent fights encapsulated by a shit product, which is really a detriment to the fighters and not going to be a long-term growth strategy for the organization as they continue to try to figure out whatever the fuck they're going to be, because you have Bellator still operating as its own thing, PFL doing this tournament thing and having this kind of a presentation. Figure your shit out and get it together, because there are good fighters in here and good fights to be had. You just have to get fights booked for these people that are complaining and put these people that are in the tournament in something a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, isn't it just wild that like none of the promotions it seems expect a single finish? Like they just allot the time for every fight to go max time and commercial breaks and promo time. Like how do you manage that? I've watched sporting events that go over the allotted time and they just don't let you watch the next show. Like they're like, "All right, fuck Full House. Like we're just going to finish this basketball game." Why is the UFC different? Like, why is the PFL different? Why are any of them like not expecting any of their top players to like actually do good in the fight? It's
Well,
really
I mean,
crazy to me.
I don't think it's that they're not expecting it. I think that it's just that they allot the time in case it does happen, if it does go to decision, and then they just some handle it better than others, because we saw in Macau it was handled perfectly fine.
I want to say that that might have been like a venue type of thing that they were like, we are not gonna just fucking let you just sit around and do nothing this whole time. Like, no, we're gonna get this shit going. Like, come on now. I gotta believe that they made the rules over there. That was at least that's what I would have done. Fuck, come on.
I
So
mean, it very well could have been, but if that's the case, then Macau needs to be the example set for all of these motherfuckers. Like that, run your event the way that the Macau Galaxy Arena did, or whatever, whatever organization was pulling the strings on that one, because that was for once a card that moved exactly like how it should and had a lot of finishes as well.
yeah,
So.
exactly.
All right. Well, let's move on from the PFL. PFL, figure your shit out, and we'll come back and say something nice about you in the future. But let's move on to this I think what everybody really wants to get into the UFC 310 Pantoja versus Asakura. This is a really really good card. I was doing a little bit of research, didn't go super deep, but went deep enough to figure out kind of my feelings about a lot of these fights, and going all the way down to the very beginning, the very first fight on this card is a good fight. So I mean, like, overall, this is a really solid card to be closing this year out with. Of course, there's the Tampa card as well. But as far as pay-per-views go, this is a really nice way to send this year off with a bang. What do you think, Chase?
I think this is gonna be a really good one. I mean, yeah, like you said, it starts off really, really good, but I think the fights that are scattered in between, they're just. I know the title fight. Listen, I love Pantoja, and I'm really ready for that. But to be honest, I just saw the dude's record. He's lost 4 times already. It's never mind. I had question before, but no, it's gonna be easy for Pantoja. This dude's lost to randoms. Like, come on.
Well, we'll get to it. Do you want to break it down like from the start, or I mean,
Yeah,
you
we
cool with
get. I
that?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
All right, let's because yeah, I want to definitely want to talk about the Asakura situation for sure. But let's just run it down real quick. We don't have to go super crazy on all of these, but as much as we can. Started off with Kennedy and Chezuku versus Lucas Dresky, I believe is how it's actually pronounced. It's Bresky by spelling, Dresky by pronunciation. Yet another fantastic curveball with the name pronunciation there. But this is now Kennedy's second outing at heavyweight after his fight with Josh Barnett that we talked about not too long ago, where of course
Chris
Barnett,
Barnett.
Chris Barnett. Sorry, Josh Barnett is a different fighter, but yes, Chris Barnett. So this is his second outing after that fight, where of course Kennedy took that fight after Chris hurt his foot. Or knee, whatever it was, whichever thing he hurt when he was jumping too high. But this is him now going up against Lucas Dresky. I think that Kennedy showed a lot of really good promise earlier in that fight before the injury or whatever ended up hurting Barnett. I think that this is going to be a nice showcase against a guy who's probably a little bit more of your standard heavyweight. You know what I mean? This is kind of a normal, a more down the line heavyweight that Kennedy can sort of flex on a little bit here.
This is a guy that got knocked out by Waldo Cortez Acosta.
Yes.
I think Kennedy, first off, this dude, when he showed up at heavyweight, I thought like my eyes were deceiving me. Like this dude looked fucking crazy at heavyweight. He was fast. He was long. Listen, pause. He was tall, long, strong. You know, he had all the tools. He was kicking. Like at heavyweight, if you can throw a low kick and a teep, like whoa, brother, calm down. You're going to the belt here soon. Like he's gonna cook him. Minus 650. It doesn't do enough justice. He's gonna kill Dresky. Dresky.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree with that. I mean, I think that Kennedy was showing like a lot of really good promise, before all of the stuff with Barnett. And in some of his earlier fights as well. I mean, like I've always thought that he's a guy that just needed to kind of find his footing in whatever division he was going to be in. Had a kind of a slightly rockier road at light heavyweight, but going up to heavyweight, I think it makes a lot of sense for him. He's big enough that it works, and he can use the weight that he does have to his advantage while still being fast. So I mean, this is I think a really good move for him, and it's going to be interesting to see what trajectory he ends up going at beyond this fight. But yeah, as far as Dresky goes, I mean, he's like you said, he's never been a dude that's like crazy impressive. Um, I mean, the
Beat
losses,
Walter Walker. That's kind of crazy looking back. I
yeah.
mean, he should. I mean, not really because Walter Walker's like bad, but like, he should. This dude should be out of here already. Like,
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking last five, one in 1-4 in his last five is not that's really not great, and then two of those being knockouts. I mean, this
he's
pretty
active though. I'll give you that. He's active.
for
That's
sure,
that's
for
really
sure.
what it comes down to. I think.
Yeah,
An active heavyweight is listen. Go for it.
and one thing I wanted to note with him though, and this is something that I just recently found out. Let me bring this up real quick.
That was a
Uh,
great comment we just saw. Wow.
with though
The
that
fact that he's not obese, yeah, listen, I'm telling you, he's going places.
Sure. I mean, and that just speaks to the sad state of affairs at heavyweight in general that we talk about time and time again here. But as far as Dresky goes, So this dude is a guy who got caught for pissing hot. You know, he
Oh,
popped. Yeah, that. Yeah, I
what?
know.
This dude's
Well,
like,
you say that, right? So you see the picture that's on your screen currently. Check out this here. That is how he was looking before. So yeah, Buddy was most definitely
he was on the Polish
stacking.
Power, man. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, to say the least. So you know, I think that when situations like that arise, it shows that you're a cheat to begin with, so kind of fuck you on that, of course. But more so when it comes to the actual fight itself, that if you were needing the boost, then there probably were some shortcomings to begin with there. Everybody tries to get a competitive advantage. I understand all that part of it, whatever. But like, I think that he got caught like pretty close to his time on the Contender Series, from what I understand. So I mean, this guy was just making his way into the upper echelons of the sport and is already in that kind of a situation. That signals to me that there's problems there, and probably a guy that can be handled by higher level talent. And then also now you have to fight as the version of you that is not juiced. So I think
yeah.
that it kind of speaks volumes, you know?
Yeah, he's gonna get knocked. This will
Yeah.
be a very easy finish for Kennedy, probably round one. He should just light him up. I mean, Kennedy should be like when it comes to heavyweights, like you already know, like the gas tanks, like that he probably would have one of the better gas tanks as it is. Like he looks very athletic for the size. Like he's not fat. So
Yeah.
um but he should be able to put a pace on in the first round, like just what he did to Chris Barnett. Like Chris Barnett was never going to win that fight. If he would have came in there perfectly healthy, Kennedy was going to chew him up that whole first round and finish him either way. I think he's going to do the same thing to Lucas. And maybe he's not going to teep as much because listen, Chris is easy to teep because he's so low to the ground. We'll maybe see little less mobility. I don't know, like flexibility from the legs because it's a taller opponent. He's going to be a little harder to reach maybe, but I still think Kennedy's going to just dominate. This dude is really impressive.
Yeah, and to my recollection, I mean, Kennedy is really nice in the clinch as well. Like he's really smart about his short range attacks. So I think that if he wants to keep it at range, that's really his prerogative. But if he does end up in these kind of close, tight range situations where all of these heavyweights seem to want to go because no one wants to get knocked out, so they end up clinching up. He's really good with that too. He handles that really well. So I think that he's got pretty much the advantage all over as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to Clay Guida versus Chase Hooper. I mean, this is one that is kind of breaking my heart a little bit because Clay Guida is a dude who, for the longest time, I always considered and still do consider one of my favorite fighters. For a long time, my favorite fighter. He's just one of those guys that fights forever. He's going to fight until they tell him that he cannot fight anymore. He has over 10 hours of combined octagon time at this point. That is fucking nuts to think about. He's not a huge shit talker. He's just a guy that goes out there and tries his best, and I appreciate that. However, he is going up against little Chase Hooper, who is no longer little Chase Hooper anymore. He is becoming fucking his final form at this point, and I just think that this is going to be a nice stepping stone instance for Chase.
Yeah, that's what the first thing I was gonna say is the fact that they didn't update his photo here is pretty rude because he's now fucking Chad. Like Chad Hooper is ready to come take over.
He
And
has put on a lot of muscle. You are not lying.
and it's good to see that the record is starting to add up for him because he's a very active fighter. When you break it down, like for how young he is, he's been fighting in the UFC for a good amount of time, and his most recent loss being Steve Garcia. Listen, that dude to this day is still taking heads off. So you can't really say too much about that one. Anybody's gonna die to that fucking guy. Right now, right then, bad loss. But right now, good loss. It's aging well. Chase Hooper can come get some revenge at some point. I think it would look good too because he's girthy. Pause, and it's good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Guida is a dude who has been submitted a number of times. I mean, God, with 21 losses, I'm sure you can think of
That is
eight.
crazy.
I,
That is
that
crazy.
he has more losses than some people have entire careers, you know. So
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that there throughout the course of those 21, you can see a whole myriad of different methods of loss. But you know, Guida is a dude who is comfortable wrestling. Of course, you know it's his primary base. However, Hooper is also extremely comfortable on the ground. So I mean, like what we saw against Borshev, I mean, if he is anywhere near the level that he was at that time, it just is not going to be boding very well for Mr. Guida. And I mean, having this kind of a price tag attached, this minus on this book at least 1150, that is fucking crazy.
Yeah, it's warranted though. He should maul him. It
Yeah,
should be very, very easy. Another thing I want to say about Clay Guida, I don't know if you ever saw Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid, towards the end of his run. Um, when the hair starts to go of your favorite fighters, that's just a real shame. Like Clay Guida, he's getting bald, like it's like fading away from him. It's like, just let it go, man. Just go bald for the last fight. Just let us have a good image of you not looking like you're disgustingly losing your hair. I would just prefer that.
all right, fair enough.
Because like, bro, think about back in the day. Think about what Clay Guida used to be, the hair.
it's
And now
true.
you look at this and it's just heartbreaking. You could just get rid of it. Just beat them to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the probably best route for 9 out of 10 guys who are going through that is just shave it off. Chicks dig the bald head anyway. People think that
Martian
they don't.
Tibura, just get fucking rid of it, dude.
Yeah.
Paulo Costa's getting there too, man. Did you see him in his last
Oh,
fight?
I
I
thought he
mean, this
just
is
didn't. He Costa just had the hair transplant, didn't he?
listen, he needs to get another one.
Yeah.
Anyway, this isn't the hymns part of the fucking
Sure.
show.
Yeah. Exactly. But sponsor us, please.
Yeah,
But yeah, look, as far as the fight itself goes, it does seem like it's a little bit of a foregone conclusion for Chase Hooper on this one. It seems to be kind of a, I mean, I don't know if this will end up being Clay's last one, but it would certainly be appropriate if it was. And I did want to bring up this point because it was something that crossed my mind. So last time that Clay Guida fought, he faked retirement so that he could get an octagon interview. Do you think that this is retribution from the UFC for pulling that stunt?
I'm trying to think because Dana has said some shit that would make you feel like that he would hold a grudge against somebody for doing that shit. Like Henry Cejudo, like when he retired when he's retiring again, Dana said he's not going to get another speech. Like he already had his fucking chance to fucking retire. So that's I think Dana would hold a grudge and say, "All right, well, you're going to get fucked over in your last fight." But to make the point, I think more this fight than the last fight. I think these are two good first fights because you're expecting a mauling. For the first two, it's like, okay, I need to be here because these two dudes are going to get murdered in the first 20 minutes of me being here. But I think this will be a lot more competitive for Clay Guida. I know he's old. I hope I don't see some Tony Ferguson, where he's just like brain capacity is just not there anymore type deal. But Chase Hooper is very like I really hope to see the elite level of play that he had in this last fight. It is weird to think that we always expect the fighters to get better or at least stay the same. Like we never expect to just see a lesser version of what we saw, especially for somebody who's coming off a win. So I'm really hoping Chase Hooper comes out with the same intensity, the same level of game, and he's ready to put Clay Guida into retirement. I would really hope that.
Yeah, I think that there's probably a good potential for that to be the exact case. Clay Guida, like you said, I think that it will be more competitive than just a complete one-sided affair. I think that Clay has looked decent in his last couple of outings. Not necessarily prime or anything, obviously, but he's certainly like able. He's still able to hold his own in a fight, which is at least what you want to see. He's definitely not in the Tony Ferguson camp at this point, but hopefully he'll make it competitive enough that it's an entertaining fight. And if it does end up being his last fight, then I think that it would be nice for him to at least go out on a loss that is not a complete thrashing. That would be nice.
Another thing that you can note, going out on a loss, this is somebody who losing to on your last fight, like that's somebody like they're gonna be around for a little bit. They're gonna be somewhere in the record books, most likely. Like Chase Hooper is a fine loss. Clay Guida. Oh, okay. I was looking at his record. I was like, Jay Silva. I was like, Sean Silva did not fight this dude. Okay, never mind.
No, yeah.
Yeah. Joaquim Silva, like something like you don't want to retire on a loss like that. Chase Hooper, though, that's you can retire off a name like that. That's fine.
Yeah.
Go out on a good name. It's like this is the last at age 42, this is the competition I was fighting. And then it turns out to be a future champ, something like that.
Yeah, and go over and just do wrestling, or you can do grappling tournaments and stuff like that if you want to stay active. But
Yeah.
it's probably about time for Clay, and that's coming from a big fan. So we'll see what happens with it, but it most likely is a foregone conclusion there. This fight, however, is not necessarily a foregone conclusion. This is Michael Chiesa versus Max Griffin. What do you think about this one?
That I don't give a shit. Yeah, this one, God, what sucks is because who was this supposed to be? Chiesa versus Tony?
No, well, that already happened.
Oh, gosh.
No, I think that this is just a scheduled fight, is it not?
Maybe Chiesa's a lot more active than I thought. Yeah, he did beat Tony Ferguson. You're right. Okay. Gosh, maybe I just forget all the losses Tony's had. He just loses every one of them, I mean, whatever.
Yeah, 7's a lot to keep track of.
Okay. Yeah, I'm thinking of Nick and
Vicente.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah. But either way, yeah, Chiesa, God, I just the funniest thing he's ever done is just like, don't talk about my mom, man. Like that's all I think about when I think of him. That's all.
For sure. I mean, I think that this fight does have the potential to be interesting because Chiesa's not. I mean, he's slowed down a little bit, I would say, but like he's still active enough that like he can make a fight competitive. I would say he didn't have anything to go off of in the Tony fight, of course, but like I mean, he was still moving decently. Max Griffin, on the other hand, I mean, as a dude who's getting up there in age himself, still has power. I mean, this is kind of a styles make fights kind of fight. I would say that there's potentially something decent to be had here.
We talked about the ages on last week, or the last pay-per-view with John Jones.
Mm-hmm.
There's hella old people on this one too. Like, golly, can we get these ancient motherfrickers out of here? Like,
well, I mean, that goes back to my side of the equation, where it's like if they are actually still making these fights interesting, then there's nothing wrong with it. Don't be a hater, young man.
yeah, I hope Chiesa comes out here and is interesting, because if he comes out here and loses, which I'm very well expecting, and like I don't know, I'm gonna be excited to watch him lose. I'll say that. But if he wins, I mean, it's a good win for him. Good job.
Haterisms just left and right coming out of Chase on this one, but no, I do think that Griffin will probably take this one. I think that the power is going to be there for him still, and it's really just a matter of finding the right shot and being aware of the movement of Chiesa and not letting himself get taken down too many times. If he goes to the ground a whole bunch, Chiesa might be able to sub him.
What this fight is gonna be is just me drooling about the next fight for 15 minutes. Like that's all this one is gonna be. This is just I'm gonna completely forget about this. My brain's gonna be wiped. The Men in Black neuralize. It's like next fight, it's coming on. I'm ready.
Well, then I think that I'm calling it right here, right now. This is going to be fight of the night. How about that? But we can move on from it because I know you want to talk about this one. So let's that's fine. I think that Max Griffin will probably win that fight. But all right, let's move on to Cody Durden versus Josh Van, the pair of darlings of the Discord, #1 fan on the planet, right here on the podcast. Chase Parton, are you riding with your buddy Josh?
I think I'm going to go with Josh. He is younger by 10 years. Statistics will side that the younger person is going to win that matchup most of the time. I don't know how he's going to do it. He keeps saying he wants to get this submission. Cody Durden is also a submission guy, it seems, in his most recent encounters. Even though they're probably going to strike with each other. That's what we hope, of course. But if they want to finish each other, I don't think they're gonna just like stand and trade until one of them dies, because they both have this weird like they're kind of chinny, but like it's kind of pick and choose. They need the right person to do it. It's going to be one of those times where you have these two great forces, and they're just not going to be able to knock each other. I don't know. That's just me. Like Edgar Chairez is going to be the dude to knock Josh Van down, but Cody Durden is just going to get fucking titanium chinned. Like so. It's going to be really really fun. Like fight of the night is probably going to not this one either, but I think this is a good option if you want to see a good fight to show up for. Honestly, this could have been the first fight of the night. I love when the UFC has seat fillers, like fights that are the first fight of the night because they want to see that. But it does make sense. They're flyweights. It's not that high of a ticket when it comes to like, your heavyweight athletic, Kennedy. He's obviously a good seat filler too. But Cody Durden, Josh Van, this is such a good fucking fight. I'm glad it came to fruition because I'd be stirring the pot on Twitter. And I don't even do that anymore. So it's just good that they found it when they did because now we're here.
Yeah, no, I agree that this has a lot of banger potential. I think that if Josh Van is thinking that he's going in there trying to get a submission, that is a
He's
very
gonna leg lock him, bro. I'm telling you,
that is a
he
very
keeps going for it.
very very dangerous proposition against Cody Durden, who's pretty good on the ground. But yeah, I mean, really, Van's boxing is, of course, his bread and butter. He will sometimes get himself into exchanges that are a little bit more dangerous than I would like him to be in with the chin that he has. Maybe he's still working his way towards being able to, get his movement to where it needs to be in order to counteract that element. If it stays on the feet, I think Josh will have the advantage. If it goes down, I think that Cody will be able to secure something pretty easily. Um, Cody's striking has been a little bit better lately. I mean, like not as bad as it once was, perhaps. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of a stretch, but I think that there's been flecks of some improvement there. So if he wants to stand, there could be something there for him, but I just don't see it.
I think what to note about Cody Durden, and this is probably true for both of them and a lot of strikers, is that when Cody's moving forward and he's got a lot of pressure and he's confident, he looks really really nice against somebody like Matt Schnell. But when he's
Right.
going against somebody like Bruno Silva, he got a little too reckless, got a little too involved, showboaty, and then got fucking bombed. And like that was, mental lapse. Don't let my guard down. Don't showboat too much. But if he does something like that again and he gets a little too comfortable, Josh Van might be able to deliver something. But it really just depends who's leading the forward motion because Josh can start leading some heavy combinations, leading like extending those and putting a pace on Cody Durden that he doesn't want to, keep up with. But it just depends on who's going to keep the center of the cage.
Yeah, and I think that Josh is getting to the point where his confidence is definitely there for that. It's really just a matter of being able to, like, if you're going to play that game where you want to be the more dominant as far as pressure goes fighter, then you have to be able to back that up with all of the correct moves, because standing in front of the other guy, it looks great and it shows a lot of bravado. It definitely shows that you got the balls, but if you leave your chin open for even a second, then that thing is easily clipped, and we know that you've been knocked out before. So there's just a level of caution that I think he needs to have when being the pressure fighter that he wants to be. But it's a game plan that has worked for him in the past and probably will work for him in this fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for this one. I'm not
Yeah, I
gonna
like
lie.
this one too. I think that this could be a pretty. It's definitely gonna be a very active fight. I mean, it could be a pretty good one.
You hope. I mean, honestly, we get a little too we expect a lot from these fights. And sometimes, it's just not what we hoped for. But this time, listen, my guys will deliver.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm fingers crossed on that one, my friend. Shout out to Larry in the chat, by the way. Appreciate you, bro. Moving on to a fight that hopefully will actually take place, let alone deliver here. This is Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders. This, of course, was supposed to take place at UFC 309. Anders had to pull out due to a medical issue that, from what I understand, was food poisoning. However, I did want to make this note really quickly. never ceases to amaze me the depths and depravity of MMA Twitter, who had the gall to be spreading the rumor that Eric Anders, who is freshly sober after going through some possible addiction issues or just partying too hard, was basically the way that he put it forward. MMA Twitter was out here saying that Eric Anders pulled out of that fight because he relapsed. Thought that that was very classy of you, MMA Twitter. Go fuck yourselves. But it turns out that it was food poisoning, at least ostensibly. So that's why that fight got canceled. It's happening now. What do you think about his chances against Chris Weidman?
I think it's, well, one, I remember Henry originally, said this was like questionably a heavyweight matchup. And he did find photos of where it did say light heavyweight matchup. So I thought that was originally weird that when it was originally bouted, it was light heavyweight. And now that it's catchweight, what is 186? How the fuck is that a catchweight? At least what they're like listing on like their thing. I know that's not what it's gonna be, but like, oh, are we gonna like know what they're gonna weigh in at yet, or does
That
anybody
yeah,
know?
that's a good question. I don't know what the weight situation is for that fight. See if I can bring anything up on that real quick on the fly here, but yeah, I mean, like I didn't realize that there was any discrepancy there. So
Yeah, when it was originally on the John Jones card, like when they put out the fight card and like all the little weights or whatever, it said light heavyweight, and now I don't know why. Maybe just a typo, but that would make sense. He's getting older. I mean, and there was a little promo, and he's going up a new weight class or something like that. I forget. It was a little promo that Henry sent as well from the UFC like a couple years ago, which was
yeah,
weird.
I'm doing some real quick cursory glances here, and I'm not seeing too much about it. I guess this is one of those deals that we're just gonna have to see what actually happens during the weigh-ins. Shout out to all of the Discord members that are watching the weigh-in shows to keep us apprised of the information there. But yeah, I'm just seeing it. Yeah, 185 is what they have it all listed at. But if it's a catch weight, then I don't know exactly why.
And yeah, I mean that is
Huh?
weird.
Yeah, strange. Well, I mean, I guess we'll come back and have some updates for you next week on that. But as of right now, yeah, I don't know the full on discrepancy there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the UFC caught on to Chris Weidman's cheating ways. They were like, no, the eye pokes last time. They were like, you're not just gonna miss weight on purpose. We're gonna make it a catch weight. We got you this time, brother. So
Nice.
whatever.
Yeah, very good out of the organization for that. But all of that issue. Well, I mean, I guess that plays a major part in this whole thing. Really, I'm kind of throws all of what I was going to say into a little bit of a question here because I was going to say like, all things being even, I think that Eric Anders, especially now, a cleaned up Eric Anders, if that's what he needed to do for his life, I think has a great chance of winning this fight. Um, if the weight is going to be something that is now favoring one over the other, then maybe that changes a lot of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, guys, Chris Weidman's not good. Probably never really was if I could glance at it from a distance. But as of right now, all you need to do is just kick him in the leg. Like it's really not rocket science. He's just a 40-year-old man who's come off like major injuries on his lower legs. Like
But what about
I don't
Weidman plus 5 pounds or whatever it is,
um I think the only thing that is okay, look, if Eric Anders doesn't get to wear goggles, then Chris Weidman has a chance. But if Eric Anders gets to wear goggles like I'm hoping he comes out in, I think he's going to win very easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think like again, all things being equal, I would say that that is certainly my assessment of this fight. Uh, I mean, Anders has done some decent work in some of his last fights as well, so it's not like he's been completely slouched and is just newly born as a in this new version of himself. I think it really just elevates the fighter that he already was if he's taking care of some of his personal issues. And Weidman is on the way out. I mean, but the conversation less than a year ago was why is Chris Weidman even fighting still? So you
That's my
know,
conversation right now. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, if this it's all the same, and I mean, we're also talking about the Chris Weidman that was just in the fight with Bruno Silva. I mean, doing all the stuff that he was doing in that fight, and Bruno Silva now being essentially retired, and rightly so as well. So yeah, I think that this is just Weidman really grasping at straws at this point, and Eric Anders needs to be the person to put an end to it.
Yeah, I actually think that was gonna be my next point. I'm really hoping some humbling is coming because Chris Weidman, it would be one thing, right? If he came back from all these major injuries at an age that he's not gonna be um athletically successful at, is a good way to say it. If he came in with a game plan like, okay, I'm gonna wrestle all these dudes and I'm gonna try some like getting submissions or whatever. Okay, I could understand. I would have a little maybe hope in the idea and the game plan. But no, he's like going out here to try to stand and strike with people. Like he's an actual idiot because Bruno Silva should have butchered him. And the fact that he didn't and then, got his eyes clawed out for it is pretty ridiculous. But I'm really hoping Chris Weidman comes out here and tries to stand with somebody that is going to fuck him over. Like I'm just tired of it. Like the fact that he thinks that he's got it enough to just stand with people and they don't actually like destroy him, it's frustrating to see. So
Yeah, you do touch on an interesting element of Chris Weidman in general after the leg incident and the time off and coming back and all of that. The age continues to mount, it's progression. It continues to move on. His confidence didn't seem to be shaken in the slightest, and now based on these matchups that he's getting, it seems like there's that same level of confidence that may seem to be misplaced. And whether or not you want to see it or not, because obviously Chase is the haterisms are flowing today with Mr. Parton. But whether or not you feel that way, it would just seem at least that there are going to be fighters. Like a lot of these matchups have been pretty favorable for him to continue having this kind of mentality that he's having. So it's like you would think that one of these guys, if he's going to continue on fighting at the level that he's fighting, somebody's going to be able to say, no dice, we're not doing this anymore.
it's actually just frustrating because, like, for fact, like in this moment right now, like Chris Weidman would stand there with a straight face and tell you, Bruno Silva just had to take his loss like a man. It's like, brother, you didn't fucking win. Like, you fucking suck. Like, so the fact that he like is delusional to the point where he's like thinking that like, oh, that was a quality win. Here's my next quality win incoming. It's like, brother, if you manage to scrape this one by, if you do that, Eric Anders has to be one of the worst people on contract because there's just no way that people are not understanding how to exploit your weaknesses. It is all over. There's so many fucking articles out there about what the fuck happened. There's video clips. They know which leg it is. They watch you limp on it every time you come to the fucking octagon, brother. It's just ridiculous. And maybe the UFC knows that they're picking their poison well. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everybody in the sport knows what happened, so I mean, it's not a secret. It's just a matter of if they want to exploit that. I mean, the titanium rod might be the issue there. Maybe they don't want to break their own ankles and legs on the metal in there.
No, it just frustrates me because the first fight he came back, Brad Tavares whooped his ass. Like kicked him in the leg so many fucking times that he couldn't even stand. And I said, that was it. Like that is it for Chris Weidman. After this, how do you not watch that fight and understand all you have to do is just hobble him? And then what is he going to do? The fact that Bruno Silva didn't throw a single leg kick. And maybe these fighters maybe they do just watch the most recent fight. It's like this is the most recent version of them. I don't know why you would do that. Maybe that's what they take the most inspiration of game plan from is the most recent form. But it's like, how do you not watch Brad Tavares and think, oh, I could do that? Oh, I could eat. Like, come on, like he's just standing there. He's just standing there flat footed. Like it's crazy.
Fair. So yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, if Anders has that as the game plan, then it should be pretty well set. If he's going to do some wild stuff or try to go outside of the box, then perhaps Weidman gets another opportunity. Perhaps the double eye poke is on deck again. Who knows?
It
But
is always an option for
it's
Chris Weidman.
always an option indeed. So, I mean, there is some potential there for Weidman to, figure out something that is exploitable if Anders lets that be the case, but really stick to the game plan and get yourself a win, Eric Anders.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on to a fight that is probably going to be way more competitive and way more exciting, I would say, is Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. I love this fight. I am very excited for this one. This might be the one I'm most excited for on this card.
What I'm actually concerned about is that a couple. Let me see how long ago it was. I mean, it doesn't matter how long ago it was for Brian Battle, but he did lose to Reinat Fakhretdinov.
Yeah, that
It
that was
it went to decision. Okay, I thought
yeah, I mean,
when I saw the clip, I thought he got finished. I'm not gonna lie. So it was maybe just a bad moment that they showed, but he went to decision and lost to Reinat. We know Reinat right now to be someone who's getting questionable opponents and skating by on them. And skating by means Muhammad Akbar Alo Douali is like giving you the 30-27 when you lost kind of deal. So it is interesting that Brian Battle is a lot better now, but Reinat seems to be not as good as we thought. So that is something questionable to point out, is that Brian Battle, if he does get skate by on a loss, it's like maybe we should have seen it coming, because the level of competition that he lost to at one time is not as great as we once thought they were.
fair. I mean, I think it's a fair assessment of it, but I wouldn't judge him too much off of that as in the big picture, I would say. Um, Really, I think that the same basic criticism can probably be leveled against Randy Brown. I mean, he's of
Jack
course
Della Maddalena, yeah.
that's a little bit of a different story. But I mean, if we're talking 2020 Vicente Luque, sure. I mean, I
Nico
think
Price.
so there you go. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like if you it depends on how far back you want to dip in for that kind of thinking and where they're at now. I mean, Randy Brown has fought a lot of really good people. A couple have been better than others, of course, but I think that he is just really solid. I really think this is a very even matchup in a lot of ways with that when it comes to that. I think both these guys are just solid bases in general. They're working off of a good foundation. Both dudes somewhat similarly built, and they're both tall, long guys. So I mean, like, there's a lot of potential for this to be kind of a clash of two dudes who are similar in some ways. I think that Randy might have a little bit of an advantage at distance. So, that could be the way that he wants to approach it. Try to stay on the outside, use his range, and get his kicks off. That would probably be a smart thing. But if it starts getting close, I think that this could be really end up being a dogfight. So I wouldn't really take the losses as like the determining factor here. I think it's really about where they're both at now.
Yeah, this will be look, it'll be interesting, and I'm very excited to see my boy Brian Battle. So I'm just look, this card has got a lot of fights that I'm just so excited to happen, and we just got to get ready to have them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and who doesn't like Brian Battle at this point, man? The guy
Yeah.
is making a name for himself just off of having to put people in their place on the mic, and several times. People, of course, talk about the France post fight, and that was one of his better moments
Not that
there.
long ago, actually. I was about to
Oh
double
yeah,
check like how quick of a turnaround that is. This is really quick. September 28th, so the end of September specifically.
yeah,
That's
staying active indeed. So I mean, then there a lot of people are talking about that one on the mic, not losing a fist fight to a French dude, but I don't think enough people give him credit for how he put Angelosa in his place after the bullshit no contest with the glancing eye poke situation that I did a whole video breakdown on because of how dumb it was. Brian Battle had a lot to say about that too. And what I said in that video, which I think really does stand up based on those two incidents together combined, is that I like the way that he conducts himself as a person. He's a guy who doesn't go out there starting shit, but he will finish shit. So, because if you go back to the Paris incident, it's not like he was booing himself. If the crowd had been there sitting there clapping politely and cheering for him, then he wouldn't have had to get lippy with them. If Angelosa hadn't taken the easy way out in that fight, he wouldn't have had to lay into him on the microphone. But these are the situations that he's finding himself in, and he's not a bitch. So he's
Yeah.
going to go out there and tell it like he fucking sees it. And if you keep winning your fights like you have been, then I think that there's a lot of potential for this guy to be a continued star in the making.
Yeah, 100%.
But he still does have to get through Randy Brown, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on Randy Brown. So that's why I really am looking forward to this fight in general. I think that this is really going to be a good one. My recommendation to Randy Brown would be to try to keep it on the outside, like I had mentioned. Getting into close range with Brian. He's a powerful guy, especially for a welterweight. You don't want to be taking too many of his shots at close range.
I'm trying to think of his name. Randy Brown. He reminds me. I'm trying to think. It's a dude from Contender Series. His nickname is Left Hand to God. What is that dude's name? Why does he
Oh,
remind me of him? I feel
fucking
like we haven't seen him in a while. That's the
yeah. No,
reason why.
Flowers. Was that him?
No.
I know because I know who you're talking about too.
Um. Danny Brown.
Yeah, is it
Danny Brown. I think it's Danny Brown. Danny
Barlow?
Barlow.
Danny Barlow. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we haven't seen him in a while. I don't know why he reminds me of, tall, skinny, lanky black dudes. Whatever.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that Randy Brown is better, more well-rounded than Barlow is personally, especially based on his last performance, which was not super impressive. But yeah, I think that this has a lot of potential to be a really, really great fight. So I will not begrudgingly. Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Larry. Um, I I don't want to say it's a begrudging endorsement of Brian Battle because I am I am a fan of him. I just it's cautious because I think that people are really counting Randy Brown out unnecessarily in this fight when he is a dude who's proved himself to be of the caliber that is worthy of hanging with the big dogs. So I think that uh, it will probably go to Brian. Like I said, I'm slightly leaning towards Brian Battle just because I think that he is that dude right now. But I would not be surprised if Randy Brown can take this win.
Yeah, this will be fun. I mean, we say a lot could be potential fight of the night, but it really is a hard one to judge because there's so many good fights that are about to happen.
For sure. Well, let's move on to some more here. Well, of course, we all know about this situation. It's been the talk of the chat on some of my previous streams. This is Movsar Evloev versus Aljamain Sterling getting moved off of the main card onto the prelims here. What do you think about this fight?
What do I think about the fight? I at first I thought, well, let me point out something funny because I think it's funny to note first is Mozart came out and said that his fight is going to be on ESPN. That's why it's on the prelims, is so that people in Russia can watch it. And I think they fed him a load of shit. Like, bro, nobody in Russia's watching ESPN. I don't even think they have it out there, brother. They have Russian Link. Like, that's what it's called. They don't know anything else. So the fact that Mozart believes this and he thinks that he's fighting on ESPN for the Russian fans to watch, like I don't buy it. I just don't buy it. I'm not watching you on ESPN like for Mozart. Like, so it's crazy. I don't know. That
Well,
was funny.
yeah, I guess his point is that ESPN's broadcast is a larger footprint than people tuning into just the pay per view. So he's going to be theoretically having more of a potential reach, I guess. But it's not like people are going to be going out of their way to just watch the prelims and then not watching the pay per view. So
Yeah.
it just seems strange to me too. I saw the quote that you're talking about there, but as far as the actual fight itself goes, I mean, so Voyev is an interesting case here because like he's a guy, he's undefeated, but he's been in some pretty snag situations. I mean, the Arnold Allen fight comes to mind. Had the rules that we have now been in effect at that time, that certainly could have been his first loss there. I mean, of course, the downed opponent rule was different before these updates to the unified rules. He got kind of saved by that when Arnold Allen was kneeing the fuck out of his face. Um, that's not the fully extent of it, even. I mean, he's been in some situations in some fights that it's like, you know, not super confidence inducing going up against former champion Aljamain Sterling here, who, love him or hate him, is a dude who knows how to win a fucking fight.
Yeah, I agree. Former champ, and I feel like I originally might have been giving Aljo a little too much credit. Like I'm thinking, okay, with Figgy, I came in thinking, okay, ex champ, he's got a lot that he knows. He knows how to play the game at a high level. Aljo is one of these dudes who is coming in with experience that Mozart does not have. But Mozart's undefeated, guys. Like I don't know. I know the zero has to go eventually, but Aljo, I mean, he's not really a world beater. Like he's just kind of I don't know.
But that's the point, though. I think is that Mofsar really isn't a world beater either. I think that if you're going to go with Evloev, you've got to go with it by decision. What's he going to do? I mean, it's not like he's going to be having some amazing advantage on the feet as far as the striking goes. Aljo's going to volume strike if they stay on the feet. I mean, he might have a slight power advantage, but I wouldn't even say that
Nah,
much. That's what I
I
mean. Like, you know
think
what I'm saying?
I think Mosvar. I think his striking will look a lot better in this fight because Aljo's is just kind of butt at times, and I think Mosvar will look a lot better all around because he is just a well rounded, like that's really what he is. Like if you look at I'm about to compare him to somebody like Islam. Like he's just well rounded and he's great all around. Mosvar is just good at a lot of different stuff. And he gets himself, like you said, with Diego Lopez, he almost got finished a couple different times, and that was early on in his career. Arnold Allen, got him in a pinch, but he is coming out on top, decision or not. I mean, he's getting unanimous. Are they unanimous? Can we at least say they're
Well, no,
unanimous?
that was actually one of the other ones I wanted to bring up real quick. Was this one? It's, I mean, it's earlier on in his career, but I was just hearing about, yeah, Mike Grundy. Well, okay, no, the Nick Lentz, that was the one that was a split decision. I mean, he dropped around to Mike Grundy, I believe, and then this Nick Lentz, he was like a crazy favorite, still got the win, but a split decision win. I mean, so a lot of unanimous decisions. You are right, but it's not like it's completely across the board.
But
And
well, and looking at these right now, it's like what I'm thinking about like Danny Gay, as an opponent. It's like what is Aljo gonna offer to Mosvar that Danny Gay wasn't able to, and
uh,
Mosvar was able to beat him.
I
I
mean,
don't, I don't
the
know.
the wrestling, I would say, right? I mean, that's got to
I,
be what it is.
but like when I think like defensively, I think Mosvar. I don't know. You're right. That was maybe a stupid one. I think I'm maybe trying to point it in a direction that's maybe not there. Like defensively, I think Mozart is gonna wrestle. No, no, okay. No, Aljo is a crazy wrestler. Yeah, and he's a lot bigger. Over
I think
2.5 lock for Aljo.
I think that
Yeah,
is a absolutely 100% correct right there.
yeah. Aljo is huge for this weight class. I hope he's able to overpower him, but I don't know, man. I'm getting overhyped with these undefeated people because they come out and they just fucking. I'm always waiting for the one person to beat them, and then here we are getting fucking told like, well, that's why they're undefeated. So
Fair. I mean, I'm going to go on the other side of that equation. Then I think that, especially with plus money on the line, I think Aljo is a really active dog in this one. And if it's not, then I mean, Evloev by decision is your go-to for that. But I mean, especially in a 3-round fight, I think that I think that Aljo could be the one to give Movsar his first loss. I think it's certainly possible. And I mean, they're talking about this, or at least it was the conversation at one time, that this is getting towards a number one contender-ish type of fight, right? I mean, that's the idea, is to push one of these guys towards a title
to
shot at some
death.
point. Yeah, right. Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I would think that if Aljo really wants to make his push at this weight, then this is the fight that he has to win. So I'm sure he's taking it in that way. He's approaching it from that angle. So I think that I think Aljo is a pretty good dog for plus money there.
If Aljo wins, I would only want to see him next against Volk, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, and plus the top of that division is going to be tied up for a little minute with whoever is next for. Well, I mean, actually, well, is Volk going to end up going up against Ilya in Spain? Is that? I mean, that's the rumor anyway, right? Yeah, because
Mm.
I don't know. I don't think it's been announced or anything like that, but that has been something that's been bantied about. So we'll have to see what ends up as far as like upper levels go. But there is going to be a little bit of a gridlock there now that that Ilya is kind of calling the shots. So we'll see. But I mean, it shouldn't be too much. I think it's really one or two other fights that have to get out of the way, and then one of these guys very well could be in a title shot. So this is going to be a little bit make or break on both sides.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, then I guess we're split on that one and we'll see what happens. This one I think is probably a little bit of an easier choice to make. This is Vicente Luque versus Temba Garimbo. Of course, this was supposed to be Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz. Obviously, if you have been around the channel for any length of time, you know that Chase and I have been keeping an eye on Nick Diaz's situation, which is not a great one currently, but he is no longer in this fight. Temba Garimbo coming in. Not you were talking about how it was quick turnaround for Brian Battle. This is also somewhat quick turnaround for Temba.
Yeah. Might even be the same card now that you say that.
That could have been.
No, damn, October. Well, October 12th, about
All right.
midway through.
Yeah.
But
Close.
this fight, first off, Vicente Luque opened up as the favorite, and everybody was saying this is basically free money. And so now Temba opens up, or not opens up, but Temba is now the favorite. Makes more sense. If Vicente does upset, I'm just gonna really I think it's only just gonna frustrate me with how he performed against Buckley if he does come out here and puts on like a vintage performance or something. Because Timba, in his last fight, I think I said, and I think I will stand to it, like that was the best form we had seen him. And I don't think he didn't finish. It went to decision, I'm pretty
No,
sure.
yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was.
he's a decision merchant. Yeah. With Nico Price, yeah. But he looked really sharp. I think that was that stood out to me is he looked really good, even though he didn't finish. Um, if Vicente finishes this version or beats this version of Temba Garimba, that's pretty decent for just like a little comeback win, even though you look like a punk against Buckley.
Yeah, I'm torn on this one a little bit. I said it was more of a lock, and thinking it through, I'm like, I mean, I'm a little bit torn because on the one hand, Vicente Luque is a dude that if it goes to the ground, actually can get a finish down there, as opposed to Garimbo, who's really going to be doing more pressuring on the ground than actually looking for submission attempts. So that kind of concerns me. I just think that based on the progression that I've seen from Vicente Luque over the last couple of fights that he's had, that it,
Regression.
yes, I would say that we're probably at the point where he's starting to backslide, which is kind of crazy to think about because he is only 33. I mean, it's not ancient as far as, the sport goes, but it doesn't matter. I mean, look, I don't want to attribute things falsely, but he did have that issue with the surgery that he had to have with the his brain issues and all that kind of stuff. That could be completely separate from all of this. I'm just putting it into the mix because it is part of the equation to some extent. But either way, regardless of whatever the catalyst for it is, I think regression really is the correct word for what I've been seeing out of him in these last couple of fights. It's even when he's looking on, he's not looking great. He's not looking as quick to be first to the exchanges, which is, I think, one of his biggest detriments currently is, like one of his greatest strengths was being the guy that was going to be able to figure out the right thing at the right time. And if you're not able to do that in the moment, then that's a huge problem with the style that he has. Garimbo, I don't like I've never been super sold on like him as like elite. This would be a good win over a good name for him to kind of make a little bit more of a case. If he is able to just hold Luque down, it's going to be a very very telling set of circumstances for Luque going forward. And I don't know if we're at that point yet. So this is a little bit tougher than I might have made it seem going into this part of the predictions here because I don't know. It really all kind of hangs on what version of Vicente Luque we are currently experiencing, and if that's going to just be what it's going to be from now on.
Yeah, I mean, It's gonna be unfortunate, especially like you said, he's 33 years old. Like this isn't somebody who's getting washed out of the league. Like this is somebody who should have been in the middle of their prime years. Like you said, there was some unfortunate circumstances medically that happened, but it just sucks if that's the reality of the case. But for people who are diehard fans of Vicente Luque, I think you should just be happy with the moments you had. I didn't get to experience those. I don't know what a prime Vicente Luque matchup, or fight would have been like. So if you got to see that and that was something that made you, happy, like man, shout out you because it's just something that we may not get again.
Yeah, it's all going to tell on the day of, I think, because if he can do like when I'm talking like a vintage Vicente Luque performance, I'm thinking of things like this. Only from 2021, but the Darce that he got on Michael Chiesa is a great example of that. Finding the opening correctly, able to secure it, getting into position that he needed to, flipping bodies. It looked great. Like that was one
Well,
that comes to mind.
if that's
Um,
the one that you point out that comes to mind, getting a Darce on Michael Chiesa is pretty fucking easy. It seems.
Well, fair. I mean, this is a couple years ago. Maybe it was a better version of Chiesa. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But either way, I mean, like things like that, though, like that ability, I think, is really more of what I'm getting at than the actual opponent. And then I mean, you saw in there. I was just had it up here that I mean that was coming after. I mean, losses to Bilal Muhammad and Jeff Neal, both still aging well losses, but losses nonetheless. And that's the
Beating
level of
RDA, that's actually pretty impressive.
in 2023.
Like considering what we were expecting to see out of Vicente Luque. I know, RDA is not somebody who's gonna like punch him in the head and be like, "Ow, maybe I shouldn't get punched in the head," type of deal, like Jeff Neal or Buckley. But same thing with Temba. I think this is a safe fight for him. Probably with Nick Diaz too. Like I'm not gonna get punched to the point where I feel like my brain's gonna bleed again. So whatever you want to say. Like I think this is a safe matchup for Vicente. He should be able to implement whatever game he wants. Temba's just gonna stay at range and probably kick the shit out of him a couple times and call it a day. I mean, that's what I'm hoping to see. Maybe give Vicente some confidence that he can continue pursuing the sport.
I would like to believe that that could be the case. So if I mean I know that the line has been shifting a whole bunch. If Luque is still plus money, did you say is that correct?
Plus 130.
I mean, at least on here, yeah. I didn't know if that had changed again, but yeah, if he's plus money, I'd say that there's definitely have it on a parlay, have it as a straight, even if if you just want to throw some money on a decent dog in that regard. I think that you could do much worse than putting a little bit of cash on Luque there, but Garimbo is going to have to be just I think more active and quicker to the draw. And that's also something that I've not really seen from him a whole lot in general. I mean, like he's kind of a guy that like finds the opening when he's already in a somewhat negative situation, and then and is able to just kind of control. And he's a very close range pressure heavy kind of guy. So again, I've not been super like impressed with him throughout the times that I've seen him fight. He has won his fights, so it's like, yeah, wins a win, and that's great. So if he can get Vicente in that type of situation, I think it's going to reflect more poorly on Luque than it will be a plus for him. It is still something that's potentially could happen, but yeah, for plus money, I think I'll stick with Vicente Luque, or at least maybe it's wishful thinking.
Yeah.
All right. There you go. All right. And moving on then, rounding out these prelims, we've got Dominic Reyes and Anthony Smith. All right. Another Anthony Smith fight. Dominic Reyes, of course, just now breaking a long losing streak and trying to regain his footing in light heavyweight. What do you think about this one?
I want to just make a note that I just clicked on Dominic Reyes, and his team is called Joe Stevenson's Cobra Kai. Isn't that a movie? Like, isn't like
Yeah, that's a Karate Kid. Yes.
okay?
But Joe
Anyway,
Daddy Stevenson, yeah, he's an old school tough guy.
anywho, that was just funny to know. The Devastator, which is a really dope name. Like, I hope it doesn't die off with somebody who loses to Anthony Smith. Seriously, that would be very heartbreaking because Dominic Reyes. You're a dude who you have some really good striking and some good power. Anthony Smith is a dude who gets beat and cowers on the mat to Ryan Spann. I think. Well, Dominic Reyes also got knocked out to Ryan Spann, didn't he?
And Anthony Smith is also the guy that beat Vitor Petrino.
Yeah, yeah.
So I, you know what I'm saying, like, I don't know how many times I have to get into this fucking situation with Anthony Smith. I constantly, I'm always talking about how it's like anytime that I say it's going to go one way with him, it's going to go the other way. So I'm like, on paper, at least in theoretical terms, I would say that Dominic Reyes should win this fight pretty handily. He should be able to strike at range better, use his length a little bit better, and not get caught up in the close range attacks of Smith, where he does have some decent luck, or not luck, but decent output. I mean, like he's one of those guys that can get his shots off if you let him, but be the guy that's not going to let him do what he wants to do, and you pretty well can get this one in, handed to you almost essentially, as far as like from Reyes' side. But then Anthony Smith just figures out a way to win. So I'm staying away from this one just for that exact reason. I have made a commitment to myself to never put money either way on an Anthony Smith fight, and I'm sticking to that.
Listen, I mean, the best thing Anthony Smith has right now at his age and with what he can do is his wrestling. And I think if he's able to do something with that, anything's possible. I just want to give him credit. And I normally don't do this, but he is a very active fighter.
Oh, for sure.
Very, very grateful for Anthony Smith for just taking fights against bum after bum after bum. Like I am pretty happy. Just thank you for keeping the activity for the division single-handedly, basically. Like but yeah, Dominic Reyes, man, I really hope that you get this one done like easily.
As far as I'm concerned, this is like a loser goes home match. I mean, like, because with
No,
Ray,
Anthony Smith is fucking staying forever. They're never getting rid of that dude.
it's one of those deals where, yeah, I mean, if he's already 38-20, then perhaps you're correct. But it would seem to me that both of these guys, if they're going to stick around, both of them, if they're going to stick around, should be able to beat the other guy. You know what I mean? Like, you can make the exact same case on one side that you can make on the other side. So as far as I'm concerned, one of these guys, please just win definitively, and then the other person just needs to really reassess.
I think it's unfortunately telling for another person that I'm going to bring up is like both of these dudes, in my opinion, win or lose. Well, okay, so lose is only the part that matters. In defeat, geez, I can't talk. In defeat, both of these dudes deserve a spot over Chris Weidman, in my opinion. So
okay, then maybe this is a loser gets to fight Chris Weidman to go home match.
if he wants to go to light heavyweight, dude, I wouldn't even be opposed. Like
True.
fuck.
Yeah, Weidman is fighting middleweight, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, well, either way, I just think that one of these guys is cuttable. I really do. I mean, it could be either one, but probably leaning more towards Anthony Smith. And then I say that, and he'll win this fight. So
Yeah.
pick at your own discretion, really. I mean, every time that I have said that he's going to lose, he wins. So I'm siding with Dominic Reyes with full intention of having to come back next week and say, wow, Anthony Smith, great win.
He's gonna do it again probably, but whatever. That's just the tail of the tape.
He can't keep getting away with it.
Yeah, literally.
All right, whatever. Moving on to main card here, we got probably the other fight that I think a lot of people are most excited about, myself included. This is Nate Landwehr versus Doo Ho Choi. Doo Ho Choi, of course, is the man in the Hall of Fame for his fight with Cub Swanson, one of the best fights that I have ever seen. So I am really hoping that this is the banger that we are all thinking that it's going to be. What are you thinking about this one?
Well, I'm looking at the record for Nate the Train, and like I'm originally I'm going on the list, and I'm like, oh, okay, so he's not just a meme guy. Like he is actually good.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
like losing to Dan Ige is not a terrible loss, but then you go down a little further and see he got knocked out by Herbert Burns.
I was hearing some evaluations of that one, And the people that I was listening to, I was listening to another couple of commentators talking about it, and the dude who was talking about this that specific loss was saying he was being very charitable to Herbert Burns in that moment, saying that Herbert Burns in the first 2 minutes of a fight, 3 minutes of a fight, he's really dangerous. And I was like, I've never seen that version of Herbert Burns. So, but apparently knockout of
Yeah.
Nate. So,
But anyway, so and then he subs Ludovic Klein. That's actually crazy.
yeah, that is pretty
But that was
impressive.
maybe before he started doing roids. I don't know. So, um, I think Nate the Train. I think you might be on to something. If you get another win here, which I think this is a win for you, because Duhu Choi is one of these dudes where I think we just want to see him get into wars, not necessarily like the reason that I loved Angel Pacheco after the Contender Series and was waiting for his debut. Not that I thought that he actually had a chance to fucking win, but I knew that he could take a beating. And maybe if he can take a beating long enough, the other dude gasses out and he'll fucking just win it, like somehow, some way. Choi is going to be one of these dudes that Nate is probably going to just go ape shit on. And I think it'll be really good performance for both of them, most likely.
Then that's the idea. I think is that really what everybody's hoping for is for both these dudes to march out to the center of the cage and just start laying it all on the line, and that certainly is a potential situation that we could see ourselves in with that. I think that Duho Choi has reined in a little bit of the I don't want to call it wildness because it's not like he's like a super wild guy. He's just a really tough dude that will go out there and trade. But I think he's fighting a little bit more strategically nowadays, I would say. Maybe that was just in his last fight because I know that was how I was perceiving him. Yeah, against Bill Algeo. I think Algeo is kind of a hard dude to judge off of because Algeo has a very kind of unorthodox style. But I at least in that fight thought that he was slightly more reserved until it was the exact right time to unload. Also, that was a weird stoppage in that fight as well. So not necessarily the greatest the greatest fight to judge all of this off of. And of course, you saw there when I had it on the screen that Choi was coming off of a pretty lengthy losing streak to get that win against Bill Algeo. It really is a fight that Nate has the opportunity to show out against a dude who has that bravado behind him, that the mystique of the fight with Cub Swanson that is really proving to be a big part of his legacy in the big picture now, because a lot of people cling to that version of him and kind of disregard a lot of the other things that have happened in his career. I think that this is an opportunity for Nate to really show out and get a decisive win over a dude who's got a decent enough name in that regard. So Nate, go out there and get your knockout.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. Nate the Train in the UFC.
Exactly. Look at this bicep. This dude is he's certainly fun, and he's a guy that you want to see win, right? I mean, it's one of those types of situations for me personally, as a dude who is a big fan of that Cub Swanson fight. I want to see both of them win. It's another one that, like the Randy Brown and Brian Battle fight, like it would be nice to see, to have two winners in it. But I think that if we're really being logical about it, even though the odds are pretty goddamn close, I mean, a -140 and a +120, that I'm kind of surprised by that, especially with Choi having the losing streak that he was on before the Algeo fight. Either way, I think I will side with the favorite here. I think Nate should be able to get the job done.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So the fight that replaced Movsar Evloev and Aljamain Sterling on this main card is Bryce Mitchell versus Kron Gracie. The entire MMA world wondering what Kron Gracie has on Dana White to be in the position that he is in currently on this card, because Kron Gracie, he fucking sucks. To be perfectly honest.
Yeah, 5-2 coming in against Bryce Mitchell. I hope Thug Nasty just gets it over with. It'll probably be a decision, unfortunately, because Chrome Gracie is one of these dudes that just he just fucking sucks. So like engaging with him is like it's just gonna be brutal. At least Bryce Mitchell's a good grappler, so it might be fun. But if Kron Gracie subs Bryce Mitchell and keeps his name relevant, I'll probably be upset.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. Kron Gracie is just is a. It must be the name. I mean, obviously the Gracie name still holds a lot of weight in MMA. It's the only thing I can think of as to why he is where he is currently. Um, if you look here, I mean, 2016, 2 fights in 2019, one in 2023. Like, this dude is extremely inactive, and when he is active, he's not great. Bryce Mitchell, of course, we all know, he's coming off of a very devastating knockout. Maybe that played a little bit of a part in the matchmaking here. Um, they want to give Bryce a one more step back into potentially being, somewhat relevant there. I guess that would make sense. But the only other thing I can think of was a point that was brought up in chat not too long ago, that this is the battle of the flat earthers. So maybe that's what the UFC is billing this as, Flat Earth 1 versus Flat Earth 2 over here. But other than that, I really have no idea why this fight was even made. Kron Gracie should be fighting early prelims on fight nights, as far as I'm concerned.
And non-ranked opponents.
Absolutely, yeah. The fact that he is fighting a ranked opponent is absurd to me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, another one of these fights, we were talking about that with Clay Guida and Chase Hooper. Bryce Mitchell is a minus 800 on this book, probably warranted. It does. Yeah, we've talked about this before. How there's this betflation going on with the lines being crazy. This is one that probably does make sense here. You're not wrong that this probably will also be a decision. If this does start getting into grappling exchanges, it could at least be somewhat interesting there, because that's all Kron Gracie wants to do. So maybe if Bryce goes to the ground with him, there can be some cool scrambles and stuff. Most likely, I would hope for Bryce's sake that he at least keeps it on the feet long enough to get the points in to make that side of it as decisive as it needs to be. But of course, Kron Gracie is known for butt scooting, so he might just immediately take himself to the ground.
Yeah, pull guard. Yeah, it'd be crazy.
Yeah, so I'm just hoping that there's at least some entertainment value in this fight in one way, shape, or form. Really, what I'd like to see is a repeat of Ilia Topuria versus Ryan Hall, where Ryan Hall is Umanori rolling all over the place, and Ilia just finds the right shot to bop him while he's on the ground. I think that there's potential for Bryce to do that. Bryce, show off your striking.
Yeah, yeah, farm strength. Let's see what all that building the pig pens and shit has been doing.
Goddamn right, exactly. So I think that Bryce has this in the bag. It would be very, 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 very surprising if Kron Gracie is able to pull out a win.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov. Of course, this is a rematch. Cyril Gane won the first of their fights. They are doing it again. What do you think?
Wow, I didn't know I'm kind of surprised. Cyril Gane has actually been fighting in the UFC. Like he has a lot of fights in the UFC specifically. Like when you look at his record, 12-2, like 9 of them have been in the UFC. So shout out him because like he fought a 5-round fight with Volkov, 3 years ago. That's listen. Normally, when you get these rematches, they're just 3 rounds, and there's not much to go off of or whatever. We have 5 rounds of Cyril Gane styling on Volkov. Volkov's lost plenty of times. He's probably gonna lose again.
Yeah, it's slightly interesting with this one after the Sergey Pavlovich fight for Volkov. Of course, Sergey Pavlovich has had a very quick and somewhat decisive downfall as of late, at least in his last couple, which I don't think a lot of people were expecting. And so I think it was very unexpected that Volkov factored into that, because I think a lot of people, myself included at the time, thought, oh, you lose to Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall, of course, the interim champion now, that's acceptable. That makes sense. It was unexpected at the time, but you come back, you fight Alexander Volkov, you get your wins back. maybe you have the rematch with Aspinall at some point down the road. Then for him to lose to Volkov kind of said more about Pavlovich than it did about Volkov. So I, up until this point, was kind of riding with Volkov in this fight. I was like, well, I mean, he knows what Cyril Gane is bringing to the table. If he's already fought him, he's had a ton of fights. I mean, he's 38-10, so it's like, he experience is certainly there for him. All of that being said, it's really, I think the only thing I could say that could be going in Cyril Gane's as a detriment to him is that he is a little bit rusty at this point. I mean, he did have the Spivak fight not too long ago, but
last year.
yeah, I mean, it's still last year and it's still Sergey Spivak, so you can kind of draw your own conclusion from that. Cyril Gane just doesn't seem like he really, like, his heart's in it, at least as of late. Now maybe that's just perceptionally, as far as him with his acting, and of course the John Jones fight plays a factor into that. People are different after they lose to John Jones. That's just a tried and true thing. It didn't prove that way in his last fight, but those are the factors that I say that could be possible detriments to him. I don't know. What do you make of all that?
Um, I I don't know, man. I think Surreal Gone, if he comes motivated, which it doesn't seem like he will, because he just doesn't, like you said, he just doesn't seem like his heart's in it. Doesn't ever seem like he wants to be there. Like there was one time, there was a couple videos of him backstage where he was impersonating Nate Diaz, and I thought, okay, there's him actually enjoying like MMA culture. But other than that, it just seems like he's a big athletic dude who's got to get a paycheck, and he's a kickboxer, you know. So at the end of the day, Volkov, whatever game plan he thinks he's going to implement, he didn't do it the first time. He had 5 rounds to do it, and he's faced plenty of strikers. And I always talk about, if he has submission ability. He's sub Tai Tuivasa. That ain't fucking hard at this point. So I'm not gonna claim Volkov some grappling god, because he clearly just don't decide to do it sometimes.
Yeah. So I mean, all of that being said, the odds are certainly in Gane's favor. I think that it's conventional wisdom that Gane will win this fight. Obviously, there's already been a fight that he has won against this person. It would all of the factors are certainly pointing in his direction. I think that there is probably potential for Volkov to figure out a way to win. Maybe it's a maybe. It's a big maybe. I think that Cyril Gane's probably your safer bet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd like to see Volkov win though. I think I something about him that I like, especially at heavyweight, like being so thin as it is. I wish more for him, but at 36 and still, if we're having this kind of a conversation, then it's probably again a wishful thinking thing.
Yep.
All right. Well, moving on to the card, or pardon me, the fight that ruined the Tampa card for me. This is Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Gary. Of course, Ian Gary was supposed to fight Joaquin Buckley in Tampa, the fight that I paid money to see that I am no longer going to be able to see. That is now going to be Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. But Ian Gary getting called up to fight Shavkat for the interim welterweight strap, while Bilal Muhammad is on the mend, which apparently he is now cleared, so that's great. But this fight is for the interim, and I mean, I think that this is a fight that a lot of people are looking forward to.
Yeah, and now that you make the point of him just now being cleared, it is very ironic. The fight of the week that Shavkat is gonna fight. Now I'm good to go. I'm
He was
really
at
good to
the
go now.
fucking he was at WWE like a week ago or whatever, sitting in the crowd. Everybody was saying, "Oh man, your foot looks fine now."
Yeah, he's a fucking punk for that. Anyway,
Nah, I mean, if you saw the pictures of the infected toe, I mean,
yeah,
yeah, you
yeah.
come on, you got to give the guy, you can't really hold it against him, but it does. It's just the timing is a little funny.
And so I think this fight will be really, really good. I think Ian Gary is being counted out a lot. I've been saying his striking, and I've said it for a while. Elite. I've said that word, and I know look, I know a lot of people don't want to hear that. Ian Gary has elite striking. Shavkat does keep his face way far up in the air. I don't know what it's going to tell you guys, but I think Ian Gary has a lot bigger of a chance than we're giving him. I think the aura is carrying Shavkat right now.
Well, I mean, speaking of elite, of course, shout out to elite.
Yeah.
And what he was saying that this is the real main event, I would agree. Uh, I am completely in the Shavkat Aura hype train camp. I think that Shavkat has shown the quality of his fights and the way that he fights, his style and his finishes. I think that the aura is completely warranted here. I mean, am I counting Ian Gary out? No, not as much as some people are. I do understand the reasoning behind people thinking that he has a better shot than others are giving him credit for, but I just don't think that. So if you look at the fights that Ian Gary has had that would give you reason to back him, there I don't. I think that Shavkat counteracts all of the elements that Ian Gary had to win those fights. Ian Gary is a very effective point fighter. I mean, if you're not able to finish Neil Magny when you have him so dead to rights, that's pretty telling to me. Jeff Neal, like I think that you made this point in the Discord that Jeff Neal was actively like bringing the fight to him. He had more of an opportunity to catch Jeff Neal because he was trying to advance on him, because he was actively wanting to engage in the fight. Didn't do that. Like Shavkat has against all of the both of those guys and every other person that he has fought, shown time and time again that he will finish this fucking fight. Like he is going to go in there and take your fucking head off, or choke choke it off of your shoulders. So I mean, I just think that all of the elements that Shavkat has portrayed in his time in this sport lead to the conclusion that a lot of people are drawing, and I think it's warranted in this case.
I think it's a really scary one because we would all love for Shavkat to just murder Ian Gary. Like that would just be perfect, love story for Shavkat to have the belt next. But I think Ian Gary's got a lot to offer. I do think grappling wise, Shavkat will probably have a lot of success in like the clinch areas, but Ian Gary will probably kick his legs from under him very, very soon in the fight, and Shavkat's going to be limping, and it's going to be hard for him. He's going to be switching stances. He's going to be, if he's orthodox as it is, he'll be fighting southpaw, and then we'll see how it goes. So I'm worried, man. I'm worried this is not going to go how we all really, really need it to go.
Fair. And, look, if it does go that way, then all of what you're saying is logical. I mean, like, it's none of these conclusions are like wildly left field, right? I mean, I think that on both sides of the equation, that everything is making sense. This fight makes a whole lot of sense. Obviously, two undefeated guys. Um, I think that based on the track records is really what everybody's going off of, and what is making the most sense in my mind. And like when you're saying these things like, oh, Shavkat will have more of an advantage in like the wrestling grappling department, it's like it's levels. I mean, like it's levels different, because it's like if you're going off of Ian Gary being able to hold his own against MVP in that regard, or not wanting to strike with MVP, so he took it to the wrestling territory. Shavkat ain't playing that game. Shavkat can strike with you too. So I mean, like, will he be able to use range as much? I mean, if Ian Gary is going like that is one. Okay, if I can say anything to Gary's credit, he is a fighter that does prepare for the fight that he is going into, which is a good credit to him. That's exactly how he was able to come to the conclusion that he got with MVP. He said, okay, I know that this guy is a dangerous striker. I'm going to do the wrestling thing. Worked out in his favor for that. I don't think that the preparation that he is going to do for Shavkat is going to equal up to the same conclusion here.
Yeah, I I just think it's going to be interesting, and I really can't wait for this one.
Yeah,
Seriously.
same. And I mean, to your point, I think that there probably is a healthy amount of flat out Ian Gary hatred out there, of course, based on everything that everybody knows about him and his relationship and all of the factors that go into the goofball lol cow that Ian Gary has made himself out to be in this sport. throw all of that out the window and looking at it straight down the line, fighter versus fighter. I just don't think that I mean, I've said for probably it feels like 2 years now, going back that long, even before all of the other wins that Shavkat had racked up in those times, I was saying Shavkat is next. So
Yeah.
and I think that he has as good a shot against Bilal. I think that he's got I don't see as well rounded a fighter at middleweight currently than Shavkat. I mean, people are talking about him versus Jack Della. I'm like, he would annihilate Jack Della, in my opinion, just based on what we've seen. But take the Jack Della that fought Kevin Holland and put that
Yeah.
against, you know what I'm saying? Like, I like, so I see that and I take that by extension to pretty much the rest of the division. And it just always comes out Shavkat to me.
100%.
So we'll see, though. I am completely ready to eat all of those words should they be incorrect. But in this case, I'm riding with the Nomad. All
All
right,
right.
moving on and closing out this UFC 310 card is the main event. Alexandre Pantoja versus the newcomer to the UFC, Kai Asakura, coming over from Ryzen. What are you thinking?
I think my boy Alexandre, whatever, I can't even read, can't even speak. Pantoja's gonna get it. Like, it's actually pretty simple. He's just that dude. I mean, they want to talk about his age, like 34, guys. Like, he's like,
Really? They're talking about his age is the problem? He just looks old. He's got an old
I,
man face.
I think that is part of it too. But no, yeah, they talk about his age. Yeah, it's definitely his age is like a big issue. But at 34 is kind of crazy. Like, he could still do this for a couple more fights. Like, we're good to go. And the Ryzen dude, he's already lost 4 times. Like, Tatsuro came in undefeated, and Roy Val worked him over. So I think Kai, he's got a lot. He's got a lot to work for here. If he thinks he's going to come in here, if this is a walk in the park, is what he's thinking, he's got another thing coming. This dude Pantoja is a real Chad.
Well, so what I will say about this fight, or at least about Kaya Sakura to start off with here, is shout out to Fight Show, the homies over there, and my friend Sarah from Fight Show did a whole breakdown on Kaya Sakura, which she was going to send to me and then did not do. So shame, Sarah, for not sending that over because I was looking forward to finding out a little bit more about Asakura than I currently know. However, based on the cursory research that I have done, which is a little bit, I mean, I was looking into him just to try to get a handle on exactly why he was hot shotted to a title shot off of not being in the UFC, which is very, very rare. His wins in Ryzen have been pretty impressive. There, of course, his one of his biggest highlights was the complete cracking of one dude's jaw. Like they showed that X-ray in the promo of the guy's jaw pretty much broken in half. So obviously he's a powerful guy. Alexandre Pantoja is a dude who has figured out a strategy to win that has worked for him many, many times in the past at this point, and he does not really have much of a need to deviate from. So Asakura has all of the tape that he needs to know exactly what Alexandre Pantoja brings to the table in this fight. It's really going to be a matter of is he as good as this hot shotting is leading one to believe.
No, there's no way you could live up to getting a title shot on your first, entry into the sport. Like, it's just not going to happen. Pantoja, listen, my golly, if you give up the belt like this, you really shook up the division. But I just I don't see it, man.
Well, clip it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see if Chase will be eating his words. But again, this is a dude who was a dominant champion in Ryzen. Obviously, the organization saw something in him enough to say, if you come over, we're going to give you the immediate shot. So his highlights look good. He is a dude who takes the sport pretty seriously from everything that I've seen. Also, I guess a little bit of a social media influence in Japan. Of course, the Japan element is something that I think that the organization is really looking for, developing more of a foothold in a country that is severely underrepresented in current MMA, even though it has such a rich and long history in the sport. So I think that there's a component in that. A lot of eyes going to be on him for that reason. Pantoja is tried and true at this point, though. I mean, it's really, I think, going to be a matter of if this Kai Asakura has the ground game to be able to hang with Pantoja in that regard, because his striking is obviously pretty next level from all of what I have seen. Pantoja is just a dog who will not give up, though. So,
Yeah,
he'll take those shots, man. He really will. I mean, you go back to those Brandon Moreno fights. This dude will take the damage.
I think that's another great point. Is like Pantoja. If you listen to him talk and you listen to him in interviews and about what he wants and like what motivates him, it's like he's just a blue collar working man. Like he's the champion because he's trying to feed his family. Like he's feeding his family because that's what he's here to do. Like that, it's his job as man, and he really does live up to that. Like he's not coming in here to lose his belt. Like Pantoja's coming in here because he's got money to make and he's got a legacy to live. Like this dude is a real deal. I really respect this dude.
Yeah.
This is the flyweight DDP. Like this is great.
Yeah, I mean, a guy who started out delivering for Uber Eats, took it all the way to the belt. I mean, you got to respect that, and he doesn't want to lose it. So it's going to be a big test for him. Obviously, it's exceedingly rare. I mean, I'm trying to think. I'm sure that there might be other examples of it, but they're escaping me right now. But I don't know off the top of my head. Is this an unprecedented situation? Has there been another instance of a person coming into the organization fresh and just instantly getting a title shot? I mean, uh, it, it would be exceedingly rare if it's not the first time.
The closest that I would believe would be, if you want to count interim, would be Michael Chandler.
Sure.
Or if you want to just go off strictly a actual title shot, it would be Brock Lesnar probably.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense as well. So, both of
What
those
or
examples are somewhat
no, I mean
outliers.
probably John Jones. Actually, probably John Jones. I mean
Well,
that
but I
was
mean, he was not in another organization coming
oh
over or
true
anything
true
like
yeah
that.
yeah true. Well,
Yeah.
I guess technically neither was Brock. I mean WWE, but like whatever. That wasn't.
Yeah. So either way, regardless, I mean, the fact that we're even having to have this type of a conversation about it shows you just how rare it is.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously something here that is being recognized by the promoters to look out for, and we're all gonna get a nice introduction to him. I think that's really what I'm hoping for as well in this fight, is that it's like, if Asakura is this phenom that they're painting him out to be by giving him this title shot, at least live the fuck up to this.
Yeah.
Because it's like I could just really see, because I mean, based on your logic here, at least Chase, it's like Pantoja comes in, takes him down, essentially grapples his way to an easy victory if he has no ground game. I mean, you don't want to see that based on this set of circumstances that we're talking about here. So just at least come in here and show why you deserved this in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if Pantoja makes it look easy, man, oof, God, we're looking at just like the featherweight, or yeah, no, flyweight. Excuse me. We're looking at the flyweight king right now. Like Jesus Christ.
It's true. And then flyweight just continues to somewhat spin its wheels, because with like you were talking about the Tyra fight with Royval, I mean, now you're just going to have a kind of a revolving door of a couple of guys continuing to tie up the top of the division. But you also have so many killers that are coming up underneath that are going to have to start clawing their way into the upper parts of the rankings too. So it's going to be a lot of gridlock for a little while there. There's going to be some guys who will shake it up eventually, but they obviously thought that this Asakura guy was the guy to make a splash. So here's your shot, buddy.
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. It's gonna be a really really good weekend. This card is really fucking good.
Yeah, it's pretty stacked, man. I mean, the fact that we had something to say about every single fight pretty much proves that in and of itself. So, 310 is coming up on Saturday, everybody. We will be doing our individual watch alongs. I will be doing it right here on this channel. That is youtube.com/at Yama Show. Chase, I know that you can tell everybody where they can find you for yours.
They can find me on youtube.com/@cpsmalls, and we will be watching the fights on Saturday, and it'll be a good fucking time. On Twitter, you could probably find me talking some mess at Creative Partin, Partin.
There you go. Follow my boy. I am on Twitter and Instagram at Yama Show as well. Be doing the watch alongs also, of course. And next Monday, we will be back to talk about every single fight that we just broke down here. After that, I just wanted to mention that I am going to be live and in person at UFC Tampa for the last card of the year. So there won't be a watch along for that, but I will be doing a rewatch stream on the following Sunday to give everybody the full breakdown of the live experience and then watching the fights in their broadcast form. So keep an eye out for all of that. Hopefully, some new content coming out on the channel soon. Chase will be doing some prediction videos coming up and whatnot. We'll see what ends up happening there. But until next time, everybody have a great rest of your week. We will see you in the next stream. And as always, fight on.
It's